CPTSD, or complex post-traumatic stress disorder, is something that develops in victims of narcissistic abuse. It's not the only time that it develops, but is extremely common in people who have been on the receiving end and has survived a narcissistically abusive relationship, whether it's familial, platonic, or romantic. And CPTSD affects your brain chemistry. Very similarly to how someone with borderline personality disorder will have a shrunken hippocampus, people with CPTSD and PTSD will also have the same. It causes actual brain damage. And the hippocampus is responsible for a lot of your emotional regulation hormones. Because relationships with narcissistic people will often cause extreme spikes in your cortisol levels, which is your stress hormone, intermittently reinforced with spikes in oxytocin, which is like the love hormone, you are basically engineered to have a chemical addiction to this person. It causes a trauma bond, and then they repeat micro traumas in order to get you to stick around. The intermittent reinforcement of going back to the person that they introduced you to in the beginning, the person that you thought loved you as your perfect match and was your soulmate, because they bring that person back throughout the relationship for small periods of time, you get addicted. And you may not notice it until it's already too late. So I wanted to cover some of the subtle signs of CPTSD. This is not only while it's developing, but also after the relationship with the narcissistic individual has finished. So before and after discard. One of the most subtle ones that you might not be aware of is hyperarousal. This can refer to not only being on edge at all times, walking on eggshells, making sure you don't do certain things or look at things a certain way or say certain things, but also hyperarousal in the sense of your sexuality, especially if sex has been weaponized to manipulate you. Ergo, it's one of the only times where you feel genuine connection with the narcissistic person. You may find that you have an increased libido, or all of a sudden all you can think about is sex. You may find that your performance in bed is vastly different to what it was before. All of a sudden, because you're on edge, your performance weakens and you start to get in your head more and more. And it becomes a perpetual cycle of you are not lasting as long as you were hoping to, or you can't reach climax, or something just isn't right. You may find yourself dissociating at random intervals. This is one that I am struggling with on a day-to-day basis. I will find myself at work or at home or hanging out with friends, and all of a sudden I just dissociate and someone will pull me back into the room by asking if I'm okay, and I just sort of have to go, yeah, because you don't know why you're dissociating. You just suddenly click and you are gone. You've left the room. You may be ruminating, getting flashbacks, getting nightmares or really vivid dreams where you feel like there's something that you could have done differently, or you should have done differently, or that you're still being punished. It's hard to get past that vision of the perfect person that you knew in the beginning of your relationship. And your mind fixates on them and tries to convince you that there's a way that you can find that person again. And that person doesn't exist. They don't. They mirrored you and copied your behaviours until you fell in love with yourself. You fell in love with the emotional connection that you could provide. You fell in love with someone who took your personality and masked it with their own face. You may now find it hard to trust other people because you've been conditioned to not even trust yourself anymore. Letting people in and see your vulnerabilities and your insecurities makes you feel exposed and weak, because for so long your vulnerabilities and your secrets and your insecurities have been weaponized against you by the person that you trusted most. And trusting someone else after not even trusting your own intuition, not even trusting your own judgment, and trusting entirely in the false reality that the narcissistic individual has presented you is terrifying. You don't want to accept your reality of things, the actual reality of things, because for so long you bought into their fairy tale. Another sign is self-isolation and avoidance. You may find yourself unable to reply to messages, and you've got an inbox full of people who are trying to talk to you, and you just can't bring yourself to communicate with them. If someone asks you how you're doing or how you're feeling, you may try and avoid the subject entirely, make a joke at your own expense, or, allude to the fact that, you're okay really, and what you're dealing with is not a big deal. Because how are you meant to explain CPTSD to someone who hasn't experienced it? Because you can't point to just one event that caused it. You can't say, This is the reason that I feel this way, because there's so many small reasons that built up over a massive amount of time. You had your own autonomy stripped from you. You had your opinions, your thoughts, your feelings minimized. You were invalidated by the person who supposedly loved you the most. And they had a very funny way of showing that. And you may even find yourself avoiding things like actually getting help because you feel entirely helpless. You feel like you can't move past this person that you gave everything to. You feel like there is no future for you anymore. Their future faking was so convincing, so real, spoke to what you wanted more than anything, that now that you've been denied that, now that you no longer have access to this person, it feels helpless and hopeless and like you no longer have a place. You do have a place. People will find you a place. People already have a place for you. You just have to find your people. And a lot of the time, those people are the people that were kept away from you by the narcissistic individual when they isolated you. And any of these things can be triggered at any point. There may be no rhyme or reason to it. It may be a sound that you hear that somehow reminds you of a situation that you were in, or a moment in time where you felt great with this person, and now that you've lost them, you feel the entire weight of the world crashing down on you. It may be that something reminds you of one of the horrible things that they did to you, and you go in yourself and you close up like a clam. Your body language shifts suddenly. Your shoulders hunch, your legs cross, and your jaw clenches. You hold your hands in your lap and cross your arms to try and protect your body, because you are still in a state of hyper alertness and hyper arousal, and you can't stop fixating on the person that broke you. Because even though they took you from yourself, they took everything that made you who you are, they took everything that you enjoyed and made you hate it, they took everything that made you an individual that they fell in love with, even then, you still love them in spite of that. You still love them in spite of their flaws. And you still care about them. And they've made it clear how little they ever cared about you, how little they ever loved you, and how little your feelings ever mattered to them. It only mattered when it benefited them. So CPTSD is a bitch, but help is out there for it. And if you find yourself experiencing any of the things that I've mentioned, please go and seek some help. Your struggles are valid, they are real, and if you don't get any help for them, if you don't talk to someone, they are going to consume your life. I know for a fact that they have consumed mine.